Many thanks on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds to Russell Nohelty for joining me today. Thank you so much for taking the time, Russell.
Thanks for having me. I have to say, you are the most persistent human I've ever had. When you email like a week before, a day before, the morning of, like it's nice. Yeah, I told Karen, I was like, it's my wife's birthday today, and I was like, I cannot be late. This person has like is like so doggedly about like giving me the times. I must be back with your breakfast by like 8:45 so I can be there on time. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, sure. Well, I'm always flexible too. So, if it was indeed the case, or is indeed the case, that you need to step away to celebrate your wife's birthday, that's totally fine. Uh, I find I've been to several of these meetings where I'm kind of sitting and I'm waiting and I'm like, should I have emailed them? So I try to be good about that. I hope I didn't spam you too much.
Oh, no, I like it. I'm a similar way with people. So I'm like, it is courteous to make sure that they know the exact time that we are doing a thing. And so like I do a yeah. Um so it was good to me. I appreciated it.
Well, thanks. Glad to make it work the best way possible. And thank you also for bringing the creativity around you. We were talking about that before I hit record. Those books back there, those are your books.
They are.
Not as in you just own them, but you have a stake in them. That's your blood, sweat, and tears. And you also have several of your artistic endeavors up on the wall around you.
Yeah, I used to actually paint professionally. Well, like I would paint things and then bring them to shows. So when I first started doing conventions, I just didn't have a lot of work, so I would do paintings and I would bring them to shows as a way to kind of supplement our income.
Hmm.
I did a variant cover for someone last year. Like I don't really talk about it. I actually drew two books also. These two
Uh-huh.
right here, How Not to Invade Earth and Gherkin Boy and the Dollar of Destiny. Like it's not something that I publicize often, but it is something that is like a weird thing that I learned how to do. And like I guess I have a style that some people like because my old agent was like, I love your work. I still have it hung. Can you please do a cover for me? And I was like,
Nice.
I'm sure. That sounds cool.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, you were talking about a couple of titles there. I was going to mention Ichabod Jones, who I believe is in the corner over there.
Yep.
And I was also going to mention Katrina Hates the Dead,
Yeah.
Pixie Dust, and The Sleeping Beauty as well.
Yeah, I those are all some of my favorite ones.
Oh, well, great.
Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter was the first book that I did. We finished it up a couple of years ago with a 16 issue run over four graphic novels. And then Katrina Hates the Dead and Pixie Dust are part of my Godsverse Chronicles universe, which
Hmm.
is those two books plus Black Market Heroine. And then there are currently 12, and I've written 11, 12, and I've written a 13th novel that's going to come out next year in that universe. And that will combine it with my Obsidian Spindle Saga universe, which is the Sleeping Beauty, which is probably my favorite singular series that I've done. Um, I think if someone were to say like, what is one complete cohesive thought that you have that I should read, I would say the Obsidian Spindle Saga. And I say
Nice.
that only because the other two were like series I made backfilled to make series.
Hmm.
So the Godsverse Chronicles was like I had this book Katrina and this book Katrina Hates the Dead and Pixie Dust, and then I was like these need to be a shared universe so I can sell them easier. And then like from there, I had this like idea for what Katrina was, and I wrote a book there, and then I wrote these books that like combined it, and then I kind of like wrote 12 books. And then figured out how they all work together. And I was like, I can't do that because like it breaks this thing, but I can do this other thing. So it ended up being like a really cool series, but I spent a year designing the Obsidian Spindle Saga, so like it actually functions like all of the stuff that I did in the first thing like matches what I did in the last books because like I had it kind of all set out.
Nice. Nice. Very smart creating too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that like you really, in order to make a living as a writer, need a signature series or like a long some sort of long series. Like almost
Hmm.
every writer that has ever been successful like has done that through a series. Like even someone like Stephen King. Like Stephen King has The Dark Tower.
Hmm.
I know the Dark Tower didn't make him but famous, but like he did, he still has like a long series. Neil Gaiman doesn't have like a novel series, but he has Sandman, which was dozens upon dozens of issues. So like in almost every case, you have either a person setting out to write a series or a person who decides that something is a series in like backfill in retrospect. Someone like
Hmm.
Christopher Moore, like they have a town that is kind of their series. So like it all sets place in a town or in a world or something. So it's and Neil Gaiman even says he thinks everything is in one world, even though like they kind of don't. Like I don't think that that holds up if you actually read all of the books that they could possibly happen in the same world. But like whatever, it's his thing. I don't care what he does.
Yeah, yeah. The artistic license, it's his license, absolutely.
Yeah, there are some people that have made really, really cool universes, like kind of like with Neil Gaiman vibes that are whole universes,
Hmm.
and like feel like whole universes. But like, does it really matter if it's logically inconsistent? If you're a fan, I mean, one
Not
of the
really.
things I know a lot of people that are just like, these are all not in a series, and so I'm going to call that a different series, like supplemental or whatever, just so like Amazon puts them one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, or whatever because
Hmm.
you really want to have this like chunky series because that's kind of the only way that you can break through and bring people in consistently and make money on ads and like it's all the marketing part of it comes from like you want to have this big long series that can draw people in forever.
Yeah, yeah. I used to work in a library, and one of the go-to things to do whenever it was quiet and it wasn't busy, which wasn't that often, was going to this like series list that they would create with fiction. And it was like the Sisyphean task because it was never done. It was like it
Right.
was the thing that you always did. It's like, well, we need to update that list. We just updated it, but let's update it again because that's just sort of the way that it goes. And I don't know, maybe a nightmare for Amazon or catalogers, but lots of fun as a reader and a fan.
Yeah, and I mean when you think of like a library or a bookstore, like just like when you see like this is all one series. So like if you had all of this on a bookshelf, it would just take more shelf space and a book and that makes it more appealing to someone looking at it instead of these like if you only have one, it's just like if you I will probably pass by it, but if you have 12, it probably will not. So like there's just like psychologically, personally, I like single books.
Hmm.
But like as a my wife loves long series and especially with fantasy, like you definitely want like a longer series
Yeah.
if you can do it. Like there are some genres like I would say something like literary fiction, like you might be able to break through with only one book, but like if you're fantasy, sci-fi, especially romance, like you're probably thriller, like you're probably going to need like a long, chunky series, even if they are an anthology series, which is like each one is its own self-contained story.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How did comics become part of your creating, in addition to the prose work?
Oh, I actually started in comics. That
Love it.
was, and then I realized that like it just takes a long time and a lot of money to make a comic. And so while I was waiting on the comics, I started like noodling with books. And then I've like kind of kept falling in love with books again and again and again. It's just like something that I can do with my hands while like I'm waiting. I don't like I have there are two kinds of bored people, like people that like recover by doing nothing and people that recover by fiddling with stuff, and I'm definitely the second one.
Mhm.
So like just noodling, it was just a thing that I could do and I could write a script for comics and send it off to the artist and then like I could get back to doing the novel stuff and then the art would come in and it's really a great way to kind of I don't want to say supplement but like to well supplement your creativity because if you're doing if you're doing a lot of novel work, like it's possible to like you want to be in other formats like comics or board games or like whatever the other format is, like you can start hiring those things out. And people are always like, I could never make comics, I can't draw. And I'm like, well, like, I mean, you can hire people that can draw. And I
Hmm.
feel like with people that are authors, like they don't, they have such a broad imagination, but they don't have imagination of like how they can actually get their work done very readily. And they
Hmm.
don't have the imagination of like building teams to make things done outside of them, which is weird because like they already know editors, they already know they have to get a cover artist usually, although a lot of them do not do either of those things. Um, so yeah, it started with comics. It actually started with movies, and then it moved to comics, and then it moved to books afterwards. I'm a pretty visual human. I used to be a fashion photographer too.
Oh wow, yeah.
So like the idea of like movie to comic and then comic to book really worked for me. And most of my first two of my first three books, my first two books were scripts that I had made that I adapted into books. So like I knew the story worked. The stories had already been optioned or and so like I like knew that there was something there and I could come back and be like, okay, like the structure may not work, but like how do I make this function?
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you're deciding on stories to tell, are there particular elements or particular types of stories that you get most passionate about and engaged with?
I mean, I'm a huge death mythology kind of person. Like I love all mythology, but specifically like demonology and specifically like how cultures punish their dead or like after they die. I've always been like really passionate about. And so like that idea about like grief and loss and dying, and then also the thing that most people say about my work is some version of your work made me feel like I have agency in a world that feels like it is taking it away from me. And so like
Mhm.
it's a lot of there's a lot of thinly veiled critiques of capitalism in my books, like a lot of like individual against power, the Gods versus Chronicles, like the Obsidian Spindle, they're just like mostly regular humans or regular fae, like stuck in this cycle that the gods have perpetuated, and they have to like break through of that. So it's a lot of yeah, and I mean, so most of my work is some regular kind of thing or superpowered thing against an even more powerful like force and how they take agency back from them.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that idea about helping readers find agency. I was just doing some writing about that actually, and how comics can do that because you can literally see a character that looks like you or see a world that's like yours or that you want to step into to escape from your world. So I really appreciate a lot about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I write Noble Bright books, which is something that came out, that a word I didn't even know a couple of years ago, which is the opposite of grimdark, where like the heroes win in the end.
Mhm.
I always thought it was important, and like I only have one or two books in my whole catalog where the heroes don't like win in the end, even if they didn't, the winning doesn't really happen in the way that they thought, or it didn't give them what they wanted. Like they generally win at the end, and so yeah, I think that I write those books because so often we don't win in the end, and I like to control a world where like beset on all sides, people can actually stand a chance of winning.
Yeah, yeah. Now, before we were recording, you also mentioned that I believe you said it was something like 30 books that you've been part of in production. Um, is that
It's
right?
way more than that. I mean, and at some, I have put out something like 50 books or 54 books, I think, at my last count. But then if you count books that I have written forwards for or been part of anthologies, like it's way over 100 books at this point. Like I'm part of so many anthologies, and I write books for publishers. I've written a couple books for publishers. I've translated a couple of novels into comics. So I'm pretty sure if you took all of the stuff that's out right now, it would be like something like 150 104, 105 or something
Oh,
like that.
wow.
And then if you took like the books that are in production, it's way higher than that.
What if anything can be distilled, is there kind of a secret to being prolific or
Um,
a practice to it?
I mean, being super depressed is pretty good. I mean, I suffered from general anxiety disorder for about 30 years before I got on medication for it. And like the one thing that I could control was the world's. I mean, I feel like if you just do it consistently, it's like over time you will develop a body of work. I mean,
Mm,
I would write like 5,000 words a day, but like even if you don't do that, then 1,000 words a day over the course of a year is 4 novels at least, and over the course of 5 years is 20 novels if you just do that. And I think that if you can't write 1,000, you can write 500 words a day, you can write 250 a day. But it's been, started my first comic project in 2010,
mhm.
and my first movie in like 2005. And just over time, you build up a body of work. And the one thing that is really annoying is that like time usually has to happen. I mean, like you can even the shortest circuit, if I can maybe cut like a year off of your like a year off of getting you to the maybe 2 years. But like you do have to make, even if you make that splash with your first book, you've got to follow up with your second book. And
Mhm.
then you have to, and then like that book also has to be good. Then like a third book also has to be. So like people need to see like a trilogy out from you. And a lot of people will take that chance on the first book. But with every book that comes out, they will be more and more likely to give you a try because like you now have built up this canon. And
Mhm. Mhm.
it is really no, like you can maybe you can write probably up to 20,000 words in a day. So
Mhm.
like that's a book in 3 days. I mean, I know Michael Moorcock used to do this, so like I know it's possible. But like Michael Moorcock is Michael Moorcock, like you probably have to build up to there. But like even if you can write that amount, like, and we say that generally like it takes somewhere between 5 and 10 books to like make a career, to like actually like you're going to like that's what a month, and then you have to put the books out. So like let's say you just
Mhm.
finish 10 books in a month, it's going to take you 10 more months minimum to like get all of those books out. So like it's going to take a minimum of a year, and that's like a bonker schedule that I don't think anyone can do consistently. I think probably consistently somewhere between 5 and 10,000 words is what
Mhm.
you can a person can like reasonably build up to in a day. I know some people that do like that like will write way more than that, but usually it's in like a confined space, and then they don't do that for most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Stephen King does 2,000 words a day. And even when you do if you, even if you can do that 20,000 words, you still have to edit it, send it,
Mhm.
get it back from an editor, do a second round of editing, send it to a proofreader, then get a second round of proofreading, and then probably send it to at least one beta reader. So like all of that takes, even if you can do it in 3 days, I rarely see an editor who has space immediately for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're
Yeah.
probably going to be a month or two, and you don't want to send, once someone sends the editing back, like you want them to not look at it for a couple of weeks so like they can look at it with fresh eyes. So like you would, even if you're writing it and then you're editing. So it's just, I would say, you know, Stephen King does 2,000 words a day or tries to do 2,000 words a day. Like he's had a career for 50 years.
Mhm.
Probably like it's possible to do that. And if you do pulp novels, I've seen people do, um, Michael Avallone did 215 or so detective novels and novels over his career. So
Mhm.
that's like, let's say he had a 30 or 40-year career. That's a lot of books. That's like what, 10? That's like a book a month. But
Oh.
like those books are like when you do books like that, they follow a very specific formula.
Hmm. Hmm.
So like if you want to make the more formulaic the books, I think, and the more you can take yourself out of it, like the easier it is to write those books quickly. Like the more complex a book, the harder it is to write them quickly. Like if you have a character who is like, let's just say, Detective Johnson, like, and he works in the homicide thing, and you know that like every by the third chapter there will be a murder. By the sixth chapter, like if you can develop that formula, then it really is just like typing away. Like I can do a book like that pretty easily because I don't have to be like it doesn't take much from me because I already
Hmm.
have the skill to write the the words and like I already have done it so many times that like I can make that happen. But you know that most writers want to write books that aren't just like a standard into a standard formula, and so it will take longer. So I think that this is a really equivocating way of saying like I think usually consistency in time does more than anything else. Just showing up consistently for a long time will do more for you than talent ever will.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that you're speaking to that discipline of it too, of sitting down and doing the thing day after day, whatever that word count is.
Yeah, and it's also very tiring to talk to people and you're like, well, how long have you been doing this? Oh, I can't really find time to write. And I'm like, I don't like I can't help you past there.
Right.
Like, you know, like you've made it, you've hit a block. Everyone has that block. Like
Hmm.
until like if you but like none of the other advice will work if you can't find time to write. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that you can find time to write. I think probably you can find 250 words a day, like to do that, or like, you know, an hour a day over time, even if you have to wake up a little. Like I don't know what that is, but like there are steps you have to take and there are blocks you have to hit, and people ask for advice, and like until you get past the like you've hit roadblock 7
Hmm.
and you must pass roadblock 7 before you can get to roadblock 10 and 20 and 30. And like if you can't get there, like if you can't, like we know I can't give you the language to
Right.
do the rest of it because you don't even understand what you can't understand what the rest of it is because you are blocked at like finding time to write. So
Hmm.
writing faster actually won't help you because like you don't know, you can't wedge the time in. If
Yeah.
you can find the wedge for time, then we can have the how do you write faster conversation. But like the time block prevents us from getting past there. And like it takes time to just do that. And then it's like, how do you hire an editor or like how do you self-edit? It's like, well, we can't really have the conversation about like what editor to hire until we have a process for building up money through a day job or something to hire that editor.
Right.
So
Right.
like we need like there's just like a order of things and people want to jump through like how do I have a successful book launch? And it's like, well, it starts by having a successful book and
Right.
like you like if you every choice you make is both a creating decision and a marketing decision. Every decision you make is going to expand your audience or contract it down to the genre. If you make
Mhm.
a literary fiction book about like two castaways in Somalia that like find a chicken that is magic, like that's a pretty small audience. Like you've now like narrowed down the audience. But like Life of Pi worked and like kind
Mhm.
of like it was so it's I'm not saying it can't work, but like there's just more people in the indie community that will like read a romance book. Like
Mhm.
if you want to make the widest decision, like make a contemporary romance book falling in like one of 4 or 5 subcategories, and then like you will have the most potential people. If you don't want to do that, then make a contemporary thriller book. If you don't want to do that, make a paranormal romance book or make a paranormal thriller book. And like there's a list of, and the further down you go on that list, the fewer and fewer people are in your total accessible market.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm not saying don't make those choices, but like you can't even make those choices if you can't find time to write, which is why when you write, like when people say like write what's in your heart, really, it's like if you write what's in your heart, you'll find time to write it. And once you find time to write it, then like we can have more conversations about like what you should write. And like if like your weird book about Tamarind that like becomes sentient and goes to Pluto, like is a book that you can make time for, then write that book because once you understand how to have time, like how to do X, how to construct a scene, how to construct a chapter, how to construct a book, how to edit that book, how to both self-edit and then find an editor and like get a cover and then put it up on Amazon. Once you do all of those things, it's like, okay, now maybe we should not make the book about, now we should probably not follow up that book about Tamarind. Like we should probably find you a book that sells, or maybe that book did sell, or like maybe you don't care about selling. But
Hmm.
people tell me all the time they want to make a series about sentient Tamarind samurais, and they also want to sell 1 million copies. And like those two things are mutually exclusive generally.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so like you can make your weird book about tamarind. I have a book about a pickle, so I'm not saying don't write that. I'm saying that like when I wrote that book, like I already had an audience, a little bit of an audience, and I could afford to make my weird book because my other books were selling more. But even
Hmm.
those books, the more that I write, like the Cthulhu is hard to spell. When
Hmm.
I bring Cthulhu onto a table at a convention, way more people just resonate with it because like they already know that. And then
Yeah.
I just did a show with my friend who does this book called Mary Shelley's School for Monsters. And guess what? Cthulhu was popular, but like Mary Shelley is 10 times more popular than Cthulhu right now. So you just see, and then like so all of those decisions go into it, but we can't have any of those discussions if like you can't make time
Hmm.
for your writing. And I and there's like 5 or 10 things you can do. Like I know, like everyone wants I always say, yes, yes, everyone is a special snowflake, which is like there's probably not if like 20 people tell you there's 10 ways to make more time given your situation, like probably one of those 10 ways is going to it has to work. Like even if you don't like them, there's probably not like a magic 11th way that's going to like let you do all of the things. But like people spend so much time trying to find those the magic 11th way and instead of saying, okay, like I'm just going to systematically go through all of these and try all the 10 and see which one works. And then like I'm going to make a list of 3 that worked and then I'm going to like do strategies for that. Like instead of using like research to like avoid doing hard work, if people
Hmm.
just did the hard work, probably like they would be able to get through those blocks faster. Maybe not, but like if you are, let's say, a single parent with 3 kids and you go and find 10 other writers who started with a like in the last 5 years with like 3 kids and like are a single parent and they give you 10 strategies, like probably, probably.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
saying listen to me. I'm saying if you go and find people in your exact situation who like somehow broke through that block, like that's what I like. I mean, my job is kind of as a nonfiction person is to like find that.
Hmm.
But like if you don't want to listen to me, because like I'm a middle-aged white cis man, like and your situation is different, like go find the people that have that. There are people, there's 1 million books that publish a year. I guarantee you someone is in your exact situation.
Hmm. Hmm. Finding that community. Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of your creative vision, anything that you'd like to mention that is upcoming as well as where people can go to learn more?
I mean, I think that if you want my nonfiction stuff, you should go to theauthorstack.com. That's my publication that has all sorts of stuff about author growth from mindset through scaling and yada 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 other things. We also have a conference coming up that I'd love to see you at. It's at writermba.com/conference. It's a really cool conference my business partner and I put together once a year in New Orleans. The next one's going to be in the middle of March, a couple weeks after Mardi Gras. And then for fiction at russellnohelty.com, I usually have a Kickstarter up at doing some sort of either fiction or nonfiction work. And yeah, if you go to russellnohelty.com, you can get the free novella to like one of my biggest series, the Godsverse Chronicles, and see if you like it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you've spoken really well to the discipline of creating, the steps that people can take, and also sending appreciation for the work. I'll make sure and link the spaces that you just mentioned so people can go check out more and get a free novella as well.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you.